What's going on, guys? This is the Red Rogue, and I hope you're all doing well today. In this video, I'll be giving you folks a crash course, hopefully not pun intended, on dragon riding, the new hotness and one of the biggest touted features of WoW's latest expansion. This can be a bit awkward to use at first, as you'll be contending with gravity and momentum whenever you take flight. While a guide doesn't replace hands-on practice, hopefully these tips and tricks will give you an early look and better understanding of how to get around the Dragon Isles. This video will be timestamped, so you can look through the play bar to move between topics as you see fit or to refresh your memory in the future. First off, obtaining dragon riding requires unlocking a dragon riding mount, since there are specific dragons that we'll be using in the Dragon Isles. The first one you will earn will be fairly early in the first section of the Dragon Isles, known as the Waking Shore. If you're just blasting through the main campaign and not exploring or doing side quests or anything really, you should be able to get dragon riding unlocked in probably the first 30 or so minutes, maybe a little less if you're really quick. Again, your mileage may vary based on how fast or slow you choose to level. You'll be given a brief tutorial on how dragon riding works, showing off your two initial moves that you can use, Surge Forward and Skyward Ascent. Their names give away most of how they work, but Surge Forward is used for a quick forward movement as well as a speed increase. Skyward Ascent, on the other hand, gives you both more altitude as well as a small amount of forward momentum. You'll eventually unlock an even faster forward move, as well as the ability to spawn reset portals that you can leave at a return point if you want. Each of these is unlocked from completing later chapters of the Dragonflight leveling campaign, and don't really have major impacts on how dragon riding works in a functional standpoint. Therefore, they won't really be covered that much since this is a video more so about the basics. So you have your two main moves, and when you mount on your dragon riding specific dragon, you'll get this fancy little UI thing that pops up. Each of these blue orbs is a charge of Vigor. Surge Forward and Skyward Ascent both use one charge of Vigor, and when you are on the ground or flying very quickly, you will slowly regenerate that Vigor. You'll know if you're recharging Vigor mid-flight if you have this faint glowy blue aura surrounding the front of your dragon. This is also how you can tell if you are moving at the highest speed possible. So the goal is to always have this blue glowy effect on your mount. When you start off, your Vigor regeneration is frankly really terrible, and you only have 3 Vigor charges to work with. Using high up places to take off from is one of your biggest assets until you gain some skill points to improve your dragon riding. Generally speaking, I recommend using 2 Skyward Ascents to get yourself up into the air. I also recommend pointing your camera up at a bit of an angle like 35-ish to 40-ish degrees when you do that, as it seems your Skyward Ascent gets more ascentiness, height, it works more good, however you want to word it, when you angle your character upwards, versus just using it if you're facing your camera directly forward. As an example, I'll start at the same point in the Ruby Life Shrine and just use Skyward Ascent one time while facing forward versus angling up a bit, and it results in my overall altitude being noticeably higher when I angle up correctly. Just using it pointing straight forward makes me just kind of flow right through the middle of this archway, but angling upwards, I actually go up in so much more height that I hit my head on the top of the archway and black out into unconsciousness. Jokes aside, later on you will get more charges of Vigor, so this is a bit less of a concern, but in the early stages of dragon riding, angling upwards when you use Skyward Ascent is a really handy little trick that'll help you stay in the air much longer. You'll also want to make sure you always keep 1 Vigor charge in reserve, just in case you lose altitude or hit something while flying by accident because you decided to buzz the tower or something. Once you get up off the ground and can get into that blue Vigor recharge range more frequently, your next big tip is to always fly at a slight downward angle. Not too much though, just a few degrees downward should be enough for you to maintain the Vigor recharge status without losing any momentum at all. If you notice that while flying forward that you don't have that blue glowy on you and it kind of just falls off, then point downwards just a teeny bit more and it should come right back. Depending on how much speed you lost by losing that Vigor status, then you might need to angle down a little steeper, but once you get that, just kind of angle up a little bit at a time until you can maintain it without losing it again, and you'll kind of have to get a feel for it. Since you are moving at a downward angle at all times with this trick, this may mean that you need to take a slightly longer way around an obstacle or around the terrain to maximize your flight time, instead of flying directly up into a hilly area or somewhere where the altitude of the ground is coming up to meet you too quickly while you're angling downwards. Thereby, basically, if you just treat your dragon more like a hang glider at first, And whenever you get your Vigor charges, you'll use your skyward ascent and angle back upwards that same 35-40 degree mark like when you took off, and then you can level off again and angle downwards a smidge once again, and basically it's a ebb and flow of doing that, angling down, using another skyward ascent, etc. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that for the most part, Surge Forward is kinda not as good as Skyward Ascent. Surge Forward really is just a straightforward movement, whereas Skyward Ascent gives you both altitude and a bit of speed. And both of those combined are what keep you in the air, otherwise you're just falling with style. To make this less frustrating, where you aren't playing a precarious balancing act of momentum and super slow, crappy Vigor recharge rates and having to angle just right just to make it anywhere around the Isles, you'll need to find Dragon Glyphs, which are scattered around the Isles across all the zones. You'll be introduced to these when you first pick up your dragon and they give you the tutorial of it. And they're basically these big, shiny, golden-looking things in the air, and when you fly through one, you collect it and it turns gray, so that way you know if you fly by it again if you have or haven't collected it. You'll then spend all of these at one of the dragon riding trainers. You'll meet Lithragosa very early in your dragon riding training at the Skytop Observatory in the Waking Shore. Dragon riding glyphs can be tracked via the Glyph Hunter series of achievements, which gives the name of the area each glyph is situated. This gives you a good idea of where to go usually, though some can be trickier to find than others, but this still gives you the sense of exploration. And for those who want to explore and hunt these down on their own, then do not go on websites like CurseForge or anything like that have add-ons, because there are already multiple Dragon Glyph add-ons available for download that give you like TomTom coordinates and tell you exactly where to go. For those who hate collecting things though, just go to CurseForge and look up the Handy Notes Dragonflight plugin for Handy Notes, which covers glyphs, treasures, and all sorts of other goodies. There are add-ons that do just glyphs if you don't want Handy Notes spoiling where all the treasures are for you and all that kind of stuff. However, I haven't used any of those, and frankly, I've used Handy Notes for years, and I trust them implicitly with all of this kind of stuff, so I recommend just giving them a shot if you haven't yet. They're really good stuff. Eventually, you'll have the entire dragon riding skill tree unlocked if you collect every glyph in the game, so giving a full breakdown of the entire skill tree seems a bit superfluous. However, I highly recommend that after you get your first glyph right at the Skytop Observatory where you're doing all your dragon riding stuff, that you immediately put it into Take Into the Skies, since that is your only choice and it's the top of the tree, and it puts you at 4 charges of Vigor right off the bat, and that is a massive gain to your quality of life, believe me. After that, just make sure you take Thrill Chaser for your own sake. It is by far the best one. This reduces the amount of time it takes for your Vigor to recharge while you're in the air and flying and you have that blue glowy effect on you, so this makes it infinitely easier to stay in the air. The rest are really up to you, just make sure you pick Thrill Chaser with your first 3 glyph points that you get, please, for your own sake. It's the best one, it's not even close. Also, if you have any other friends that you play with, then I recommend talking with Lithragosa, and one of her dialogue options is to actually enable passengers on your dragon riding mount. So make sure you enable that if you're comfortable ferrying other people around, and with these tips and tricks, you should be pretty good at it, hopefully. Other than that, though, the rest of this really takes care of itself with practice, folks. Make sure you use your skyward ascents while angling upwards a bit. This can take some practice to get it just right, but 2 of those in a row is usually enough altitude and speed to put you up into that Thrill Chaser Vigor regen state, even if you start right off the ground on a low terrain area. Then just make sure you level off and point down at just a very slight angle. Always hold on to 1 Vigor charge unless you're just about to regenerate another one, get your glyphs to make your dragon riding even easier and better, and enjoy the luxuries of your super high speed flying. It does take some getting used to, but I think these tips should help most people get their feet off the ground, pun definitely intended. If this video was useful to you, please consider leaving a like or a comment, as they're both very helpful to increasing the likelihood that the channel and other videos on the channel are recommended to other folks to help them out too. As always, my appreciation and gratitude to all of my viewers, patrons over on Patreon, and Twitch subs. You folks all help make these Shiba Shenanigans possible. Thank you all so very much for watching. This is the Red Rogue, and I'll see you guys around.